Hey, welcome back to my messy office and another video. For those of you who've watched this channel before, you know that I'm a Nikon Z7 II shooter. I've shot Nikon for a long time, from an F5, D700, D750, D850. So I'm pretty comfortable and familiar with their products. I've shot birds in flight, I've shot sports, portraits, landscape, all the different types of sports, from pro football, pro baseball, to high school volleyball, basketball, football, even did cross country. So I've shot a lot of sports over my time. Point is that I've shot a lot of different genres, as well as using a lot of different Nikon cameras. What I'd like to do in this video is compare the differences between the Nikon Z7 II, which is what I'm filming on, and, wait for it, I got my hands on a Z8. Now these days, I don't shoot a whole lot of sports anymore, except for my grandkids' Little League games. I shoot mostly landscapes and family portraits, photographs of my grandkids running around. And I will admit that the Z7 II, though I can hit focus a lot of times, it does miss. So the point of this video will be to go through some of those different genres and try to figure out for myself, along maybe with you, is it worth the upgrade from the Z7 II to a Z8? Is it going to be worth it? Now, honest, I don't know, for me personally, because I just got my hands on it last night. And so I haven't had a chance to play with it a whole lot. To try and do a review on a camera after using it for an hour is crazy, and I'm not going to do that. I'm going to give you some initial reactions right now before I try to go out and really shoot with it for the first time for real. Some of my initial reactions between the two are, obviously, the form factor of the body on the Z8 is bigger and it's heavier. It doesn't bother me as much as I thought it would. I thought I'd be so used to the Z7 II now that the bigger body and the weight would bother me. At least initially, I don't think it will. I like the deeper grip. I like the more pro-like feel of this camera. The Z7 II, I usually have an L mount on it anyway, so that adds a little bit of weight. And so there's not a whole lot of difference in weight for me. I mean, this is still heavier, obviously, but it's not as much as I thought it would be. That's initial reaction number one. Number two, there's more differences in the buttons up top, the functions maybe you want to call it, and also the layout on the back is a little different than the Z7 II. Maybe more so than I suspected it was going to be. I haven't gone through, I set up the date and time and a few things like that, but I haven't really investigated all the menu system yet. The little bit I've gone through, it looks to be pretty similar to the Z7 II, so I'm pretty comfortable with that. So I don't think I'm going to have a big adjustment to that. The one adjustment that makes a difference to me is on the top of the Z7 II, you have your user 1, user 2, and I have those set up for landscape and for my grandkids' portraits when they're running around. And so there's different settings, and I can easily adjust and go back and forth. With this, it looks like, and I have to investigate a little bit more, you set it up in the camera with these things called their banks. A, B, C, I think there might even be a D. So that's a little different. I think I probably prefer the U1 and the U2 up here. But we'll find out. but that is one. There are some differences in the body and the weight and the layouts. As far as the specs of the cameras, plenty of people have done videos on that. You know, I would, if I were you, I suggest you go watch Rishi Talks. Rishi does a really good job on those kind of things. I'm not a technical guy, so if you're looking for a video that's going to say, well, here's the difference, you know, the difference between the BSI, blah, blah, don't watch this video. That's not what it's going to be. This video is going to be about, are there advantages for me going out as a photographer? I'm not a professional photographer. I am an amateur photographer, probably like you. I'm a serious amateur photographer, probably like you, or you probably wouldn't be watching this video. And so now I do mostly landscapes, like I said, and portraits. Is there a big enough jump for me to upgrade to something like this over the Z7 II? That's what we're going to explore in this video. So if you want to come along on the journey with me, stay tuned. The first thing we're going to try is birds in flight. I'm on my way outside right now to check it out, and I'll be back with you in just a minute. We need to be very, very quiet. We going rabbit hunting. Well, we're really not going rabbit hunting, but we are looking for herons, spoonbills, anything, birds in flight, so we can test out the Z8 with the birds in flight and see how much difference there is between that and the Z7 II. Just from using it for a few minutes outside with these birds, this will blow away a Z7 II for birds in flight. It just does. I mean, that 20 frames a second with that bird taking off, it's just, for birds in flight, I found the results to be the same as probably everybody else. There's no comparison. It's much better than a Z7 II. That being said, I took this picture just the other day with a Z7 II, birds in flight. And I took this picture, birds in flight, with a Z7 II. So anyone who tells you you can't get birds in flight with a Z7 II doesn't know how to use their camera. You can. You just won't get as many in focus as you will with this. There were a couple of times when some ducks or ibis were flying overhead, and all I did was point it up and hit my back button focus, and bang, it hit them right away. And I had 5 or 6 shots of them coming across, well, probably more than 5 or 6, but of the birds coming across my head, and they were in focus. Z7 II would have been hunting and pecking and might not have picked them up. The other thing I found, though, and I've seen other people talk about this, and I find it to be true as well. There was a heron that was kind of in the weeds with little strands of grass coming up, and it had a hard time. It would focus on the grass rather than the eye of the bird. You know, it would hunt for that eye. It did do that. And also, if there wasn't enough separation between the background and the bird, then it would hunt for the bird a little bit as well. But once the bird got up and it had a definite separation between it and the background, it got right on that bird. So I've seen other people talk about that, and I found that to be true as well. It does hunt and peck a little bit for a bird's eye. Now, maybe with different animals, maybe with dogs, it'd be a little bit better. But with the birds, that's what happened to me. Okay, so let's tick that box. Birds in flight. Can you get images with the Z7 II? Absolutely. Will you get more in focus than it is and be a lot easier with the Z8? Absolutely. The one thing that's a bigger upgrade to me with the Z8 than it might be to other people, especially people who don't leave the studio, and that is, osprey. That is the sensor shield. that comes down and covers your sensor when you change your lenses. Now, A, you have to turn it on. B, you have to turn your camera off. So if you're just switching lenses and you don't turn your camera off, the shield doesn't go down. So you have to turn your camera off, and you have to turn it on in the menu system to have it come down when you turn it off. But to me, it's a big deal because I shoot around water a lot, especially the ocean and seascapes. And when I change lenses, I don't want that sea spray coming up and hitting the sensor. The other advantage is the flippy screen is a little different, and you can get down a little bit lower with the Z8. And the other thing is you can turn it vertically, and all of the settings that you have on the camera flips with you, so you can still see your settings, reading them in a proper way. That's kind of a big thing too. So, you know, there's small differences between the two cameras. Do they all add up to make it worthwhile? I still don't know yet, but that sensor shield to me is a big deal. One of the advantages of the Z8 that I'm noticing this morning, and just being out here for about an hour along the lake looking for birds, is that even though I've been shooting birds for a long time out here, 35 years on this same lake, it makes it easier to get in focus shots. So it's probably going to encourage me to want to come out and shoot more. And I know that may not sound like a lot, but I think in a way it makes it more fun. This camera really does do that. It makes it more fun, makes it me want to come out here and photograph more. Maybe because it's a new camera, I don't know, but I am enjoying it. So that has an advantage. I realize so far I've been doing advantages of the Z8. Here's some disadvantages. If you're out shooting birds, boy, it sure fills up your card pretty fast at 20 frames a second. And the other one is, in looking at a few images so far, if I was strictly a landscape photographer, and I know some will disagree, but if I was hiking, let's say, and I was strictly a landscape photographer, I'd stick with the Z7 II. I think the image quality so far from what I've seen is the same, and for landscapes, Z7 II might even be a hair better. I haven't done low light yet, so maybe I would change my mind, but golden hour stuff, landscapes, there's really no difference. You'd be hard pressed to see a difference. So in that case, I would stick with the Z7 II. If you do eventually upgrade from a Z7 to a Z8, be prepared for the learning curve to be a little bit more than maybe you were expecting if you want to use all the functionality of the Z8, because you can really program all your function buttons a lot more than a Z7 II. The customization of this camera, the Z8, is far greater than the Z7 II. So even though I've been shooting Nikon for over 30 years and shooting their DSLRs and their mirrorless for a while, and I am familiar with the menus, there's more to it in the Z8. There's a lot more at it. I've been out shooting with the Z8 for a few days now. I'm not here to give you a full review or anything like that. It's just some more observations differences between the Z7 II and the Z8, and which one for me personally I would end up using in the end. The one thing that I didn't realize, because sometimes you don't miss something if you've never had it, and the idea of going beyond 1/8,000th of a second for a shutter speed to me was at the time ludicrous. I'm thinking, why would you need anything faster? Well, at 20 frames a second raw, if you pump your ISO, even in the sunlight, you have to go to maybe 400 or 800. You can get down to 1/16,000th of a second at 20 frames a second. And particularly in action, with sports, or these birds that fly by, man, you can really get some awesome images. So that was one thing that it didn't occur to me until I started using it. I kind of like that. That's a big jump over the Z7 II if you're going to be shooting action, birds in flight, that kind of thing. It's a big deal, at least to me it is. The other thing it allows you to do more than a Z7 II is you can set up your function buttons a lot more than you can with the Z7. It's just far more flexible. That may be important to you, it may not be. I haven't even gotten into any of the video stuff yet. I'm not much into video. I probably will get into it more as I go along for this channel. From what I understand, it's a big jump in video as well, but I can't comment on it because I just haven't used it. So my final conclusions would be, if I was a beginner photographer and I was just learning and I really just wanted to go and shoot landscapes, maybe some photographs of my family, and again, I was just learning, I'd buy a used Z7 II, learn how to use it, learn how to become a photographer, and then I'd probably jump up to a Z8, maybe a Z9. If I was already competent, I shouldn't use the word competent, but if I was already experienced and I was a serious amateur and I shot all around things, even if I only shot a little bit of wildlife or a little bit of action, I still tend to go to the Z8. I think the upgrade in the technology is it's massive. It's a lot. It's a big jump. Does that mean that you can't still get really good images with a Z7 II? No. Z7 II, for its price, is an amazing camera. So I'm not downgrading the Z7 II at all. I'm probably going to keep mine. In case you haven't figured out, yeah, I'm going to upgrade to a Z8. I think even after just a few days of using it, it's such a huge upgrade for me for a couple of reasons. One, it made me realize that I'm more of an all-around photographer than what I was trying to tell myself before. Meaning I was trying to pigeon myself into being a landscape guy. And maybe part of that was because of the camera. I would get frustrated with the Z7 when I tried to shoot birds in flight or action. Could I do it? Yeah, but I would get frustrated a lot. I'd miss a lot of shots. Even shooting my grandkids running around the yard, I miss focus on a lot of shots. And so maybe that was forcing me to only use it for landscapes or walk around the park shooting flowers a little bit more than what I realized until I started using the Z8. Now I'm back to loving coming out, shooting whatever I see in front of me. And I think that alone, at least for me, is worth the upgrade. Again, if I really was, like when I go shoot seascapes, I'm probably going to break out the Z7 II. You know, I already have the L bracket for it. I'm used to using that with the seascapes. Now the Z8, like I said previously, has that sensor shield. But a lot of times when I go shoot seascapes, you know, I have my lens on before I ever leave the house, and I generally don't change it too much. Occasionally I will, and then it will, you know, I might get a little sea spray in there, which I don't like. But I think that I'll probably still use the Z7 II. I might even, when I travel, I might even still take the Z7 II. We'll see. I haven't decided yet. I haven't gotten that far down yet. But to conclude, at least for me, if you want to shoot all around, and let's say you didn't have a camera yet, maybe you had a D750 and you were thinking about getting into mirrorless, but you're an all-around shooter, get the Z8. And I'm not being, if you can afford it, of course. And I'm not a Nikon ambassador. I'm not being paid by anybody. These are strictly all my opinions from using it. And just so you know, even though I've been shooting Nikon for a long time, before I went to mirrorless, I researched the Sonys, I researched the Fujis, and I came close to getting a Fuji 50S. And when the 100S came out at the price point that was at, I really considered that as well. But what stopped me was I still would go back to, in the back of my mind, knowing that I like shooting a variety of subjects. And so for me, it's the Z8. I think it really checks all the boxes. In just a short period of time of using it, I'm very pleased with it. So if you have any questions, just leave a comment, send me a note. I'll be happy to answer it if I can. Please like and subscribe. I know I'm a small channel, but I'm trying to build it up. But anyway, thanks for watching, and I hope I gave you some information. Many years ago, I met a man by the name of George Davis, and he was a fabulous guitar player and songwriter. In fact, he wrote the song "Tell It Like It Is" for the Neville Brothers. And he played in Little Richard's band. And at the time, I was thinking about buying a guitar, and I wasn't sure which one to get. And we became friends, and we talked about it a few times. And finally, one time he said, "How often are you really going to do something just for yourself?" So I ended up buying the guitar, the one that I wanted. I still have it 20 some years later, almost 30 years. It'll be 30 years next year. Point is, I hear pro photographers talk about, well, the camera's a tool, it's a means to an end. And for them it is. It's how they make their living. So I understand that. But for someone like me, who's an enthusiast, who loves going out and taking pictures, why not get the best that you can afford? Because if I won the lottery, I'd go out and get a Phase 1 and a Fuji 100S, you know. But I mean, to be realistic, if you're really serious about your photography and you can afford it, why not go out and get the best one that you can afford that's reasonable in your price range? Just do something for yourself. Take care.